All right. Megan says that we've got people on. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. Hi there. My name is Katie Sudler. I work for a company called FONA International. And at FONA, we make flavors for the food and beverage industry. So I'm excited that I've been invited to come speak to you guys. I've never done a Facebook Live before, so hopefully we're good to go. And you can hear me okay. If not, just make a comment if I'm getting feedback or anything. And at FONA is a company in the food industry. And there are a few different sectors in the food industry, and FONA works primarily from an ingredient standpoint. So we're essentially an ingredient supplier to the food and beverage industry. So at FONA, I am a community education director. So I've actually had quite a few various roles in the flavor industry. Take a few steps back, I went to school for food nutrition at Purdue. If you're like me, you're not 100% sure kind of what the future holds, what job opportunities are out there. So that's kind of how I was when I got into food and nutrition. I actually just picked it as a major at Purdue just because I was interested in food and I was interested in wellness and health. So that's kind of how I got started. After school, I wasn't exactly sure again where that was going to lead me, so I was lucky enough to find out about the food and beverage industry through kind of a lecture class that I took at Purdue. It was an hour-long lecture class, and somebody from the flavor industry came in, and the second I smelled the flavor, I knew instantly that I needed to find a job in the flavor industry because it's fascinating. So if you've ever had an experience where you've smelled something and it takes you back to your childhood, that's essentially what we get to experience on the daily at FONA. So it's really exciting. Or in the flavor industry. So I started in the flavor industry 20 years ago. Seems kind of hard to believe. It goes really fast, so watch out. I started in the flavor industry about 20 years ago for a company that's no longer, we got bought out by our number one competitor. But I started there in a regulatory department or in a regulatory role. So what that means is essentially regulatory looks at all the different regulations for the food industry or how the flavor industry is regulated, and then tries to take all the different rules and apply them to how we sell and manufacture and produce flavors or how we market them to the food industry. So is something kosher or not kosher? Does something use alcohol as a base? A flavor uses alcohol typically as a base to dilute it because they're very concentrated. So that's essentially what I did for the first year. I was in the flavor industry and then transitioned into a marketing role where I got to work with our sales team, our marketing team, and product development team to make amazing tasting products and sell them and pitch them to our customers. So that was really exciting. And then from there, I got my master's degree in child, youth, and family studies, and then took on this role at FONA. I've been at FONA now since 2012, so for 8 years in a community education role. And kind of what that role does is takes everything that we know about science, biology, chemistry, statistics, nutrition, communication, marketing, business, and I try to take what we are learning in school and what universities are teaching and what high schools are teaching and teach how we use those topics or those skills in the food industry. Because once you can relate something to what we're doing, I think it makes it more exciting. So, and everybody loves food and everybody likes to eat. So that's a really exciting thing. So I don't know how many people are on so far, but this is my shirt that I wear all the time. Ask me about a career in food. It gets a little awkward when I go to the grocery store and I forget I have this shirt on after work. Because people kind of look at me a little cross-eyed, like, what are you talking about, lady? But I love talking about how food impacts, obviously, all of our lives, and that there's so many awesome careers in the food industry and the flavor industry. So if we can, I think you guys were asked to get a mint or a piece of candy. So if you have it handy, go ahead and grab it. I don't even have one handy because it's really awkward for me to talk with candy in my mouth. But if you have it handy, again, I work for a flavor company. So I want to show you and talk to you a little bit about how and why flavors are important in the food that we're consuming. So if you would go ahead and grab that piece of candy and unwrap it. And if you can, just give me a chat and say, I've got candy or we're good. Will you send me a quick message just so that I know that you're on and with me a little bit. But go ahead and grab that piece of candy. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to plug our nose before we stick the piece of candy in our mouth. So you're going to see why flavor is actually really important in the food that we're eating. Does anybody have any candy? Go ahead and send me a little quick chat and let me know. Here, wait 1 second. Okay. All right. So maybe we'll save the candy for just a couple minutes. I'm seeing a couple, it wasn't refreshing, a couple of questions. What's the hardest part of my job? Somebody asked. The hardest part of my job is actually just making sure that I'm reaching teachers and students in an applicable way, something that's important to them. Just recently we had a statistics class come to FONA, and it was really exciting because I don't really work with statistics a lot, but trying to make sure that the message of teaching them how we use statistics in our building is, number one, kind of appropriate for the age and the grade level that they're teaching in the subject, but also making sure that we've got exciting ways to show students how we use statistics, because statistics can sometimes be a little bit boring to learn about, but it gives us really awesome data and the ability to kind of sort through our data and find out what's important. So I think that that's probably the hardest part of my job, is making sure that the things I'm talking about to teachers and students is relevant. Let's see, what made me interested in the food industry? We'll touch that just in a couple minutes when we're going to talk about tasting our food. What kind of foods would we know that your company makes flavors for? So we can't actually talk about who our customers are, unfortunately. There's something called, my brain is not working correctly. Oh Lord. This is so awkward because I can't talk to anybody. It is called, it's like an agreement that we have that we don't share who our customers are, just because if we make, let's say, $1 million vanilla flavor for somebody, we don't want somebody else to leave our company, go work for another flavor company and try to steal that business. So it's just kind of in good faith that we keep the relationships that we have within our company. So it's that's private information, unfortunately. But if you've eaten candy or had protein drinks, those are kind of the biggest areas that we've played in. Okay, so if you have a piece of food, a piece of candy, something left over from, it's actually perfectly fabulous that we had Easter yesterday. So go to your Easter baskets or your Easter stash, grab a piece of candy. And what we're going to do is I'm actually going to have you plug your nose and then put the piece of candy or mint or chewing gum or whatever it is, stick it in your mouth. Keep your nose plugged, and while you're sucking on it, your brain's actually asking you a couple questions without you even knowing it. What's in my mouth? And then what flavor is it, or what does it taste like? So typically when you have your nose plugged, you can only taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or savory. But the second that you open your mouth, you should be able to taste or detect what flavor it is. So if you go ahead and unplug your nose, you should get a poof of whatever the flavor is that's in your mouth. And the pretty cool thing about that is flavor makes such a huge impact. We typically are drawn to products because of the flavor of the food. So the really exciting thing is that flavor is important in our foods. Whether it's an apple that you pick off the tree, it already has natural flavors in that biologically and chemically. But we can also add flavors to food that wouldn't normally have a lot of flavor. So like vanilla flavor in a sugar cookie or something like that. So That's why I fell in love with the flavor industry, because you can make such a huge impact in food. So let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see. There's no typical day. That's a question that gets asked frequently. So what does a typical day look like? A typical day in the food industry is, there is no typical. So probably in most things, most careers, it's pretty similar, that there are constantly different things to work on. You're juggling different projects. I'm trying to figure out how you can reach and connect with your customers differently. So when I was in marketing, it was constantly changing. We were working on several different customer visits, different customer products. Some product developers actually have like 20 different projects that they're working on at a time. So constantly trying to keep up on trends and do research on different trends, going to the grocery store, buying a bunch of new products that have been launched on the market and trying those. So there is no typical, but there's a lot of activity around trying to find out the most we can and trying to predict what our customers and you guys, consumers, will want to try and want to taste in their food in the future. And there's a lot of opportunity in the flavor industry. Everybody has to eat, right? So that's a really exciting part of the food industry, is there's constantly evolving flavor trends just because of the seasonality of our industry. How we're coming out with Easter candy and new Easter candy, and then pumpkin spice flavors for the fall, and gingerbread flavors for the winter. So there's constantly that going on, but there's also lots of other trends like health and wellness, and maybe like right now you're finding, or your parents are finding, foods that are maybe more comfortable to them, that are maybe like a little bit nostalgic. So I actually saw on the news this morning, it's called the center of the grocery store. So the center of the grocery store is being shopped more often, just because there's this unknown about what's going on. So in order for people to feel more comfortable, they're shopping the center of the store. And cereals like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, that maybe I grew up on or your parents grew up on, are being shopped more frequently now, more than they have perhaps in the past. So, alrighty. Where do I see the growth in the food industry? Actually, this is a great question, and something that is kind of near and dear to my heart is small businesses. Suppliers and small businesses in the food industry are really what drive, move, and shake the food industry. So if you are an entrepreneur or you have a great idea on a food product, and that's actually kind of where the heart of the food industry is right now. We have all these big major brands like Oreo and Wheat Thins and Pepsi and Coke that have been around in the food industry for a very long time. And it's hard to move kind of a really big ship. I'm sure you guys have heard that word before. So when these small companies come up with some really great nutritional products, or like Monster energy drink, what happens is they create a great brand, they create a product, and then somebody like Pepsi or Coke will buy them, which is a lot cheaper sometimes than Coke or Pepsi trying to create their own brand and their own identity. So those small businesses really are the ones that are changing the way that that people look at the food industry, or by introducing new products that are novel to the industry at the moment. And then suppliers, from that perspective, you have these very large, they're called CPG companies, so consumer packaged good companies. We've got some consumer packaged good companies, the CPGs, that are these large corporations, and they're constantly trying to reduce their costs. So they might get rid of a few product developers, maybe some people in marketing. And then what happens is they rely a lot more heavily on suppliers. So suppliers like FONA, or suppliers maybe in the sugar industry or the color industry. So they are relying more heavily on us to help them figure out trends in color, trends in flavor, trends in sweetness, because we know that sugar has been kind of at the core um, of a lot of focus lately on trying to reduce sugar intake. So those big companies are relying more heavily on the smaller companies or the suppliers to kind of give them good feedback and good direction on where the industry is going, which is really interesting, I think. Um, Advice for students interested, trying to see if my thing is refreshing. Advice for students interested in a career in the flavor industry is the food industry is such a wide industry. There are people that come at it from all different angles. So if you have a passion for food in a specific area, whether it's nutrition or packaging or color or unique products, there's a place for you. It's just trying to figure out where that place is. But there's so many opportunities, or just in product development itself. There's so many different areas of focus. So I got a question about packaging. As a flavor supplier, we don't necessarily work with packaging that often. Every once in a while, from like an innovation standpoint, we might, but we don't really that often. I wish I was in the office so I could show you all the different types of packages. But if you think about applesauce, it's been around for forever, right? We used to can our own applesauce or make our own applesauce. And now Mott's has it in the grocery store in the larger containers. And then a couple of years ago in the foil packs, just like Capri Sun, they actually started putting the applesauce or infant food in those types of packages that you can stick to your mouth and suck. So there's a lot of innovation in packaging, and whether it's how your gum is packaged so it can easily fit in a cup holder, or how your French fry cups might be packaged or designed a certain way to be easily held in your hand. So packaging is a really, really cool industry. So if you look at kind of food science and what food science is influenced by and has kind of all these different focus areas. We can focus on microbiology, on chemistry, on packaging, kind of on the growing end of on like fine ingredients like quinoa and things like that. You can focus on like the regulations or the legal aspect, marketing and sales, the scientific side, so research. You can look at or focus on like a food science, food safety aspect. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of approach a career in the food industry. All right, so I got my question was, what is my favorite flavor of anything? My favorite flavor, I think there are two. So one is a banana bread flavor, and it used to be in a Quaker, like a Quaker oatmeal packet. And it was fascinating because the second that you made the Quaker oatmeal packet with added water or with milk, it tasted just like banana bread. And I thought that was super mind blowing. And I actually worked in the food industry when I tried it. I just thought it was the coolest flavor ever. And then the other flavor is, my other favorite is vanilla. I think vanilla is so unique in that it can take on so many different characteristics, and a lot of natural fruits and vegetables can as well. Just kind of, there's so many different nuances and characteristics to vanilla. So I think vanilla is probably my second favorite or first favorite, depending on what it is. So my biggest piece of life and career advice for you guys is, and I had to write this down to make sure that I told you. Number one is be kind to everyone, and everyone that you meet, be respectful to them. So don't participate in like office or chitter chatter about people, or because that doesn't ever get you anywhere. always be kind and be nice to people, because you never know when those relationships are going to help you in the long run. So I lost my job due to a corporate buyout in my first job in the food industry, and I actually relied very heavily on those connections and relationships I had in my first job to get me this job at FONA. So be kind, be nice, and respectful to everybody, and always give 110%. If you're known for always going above and beyond, you will always get to go above and beyond. And if you're known for not, or for cutting corners, or for being a slacker, then that will kind of follow you throughout your career. So always from the very beginning, give 110%. So that's it, unless I have any other questions or comments. Let's see. Again, my name is Katie Sudler, and I work for a company called FONA International. And I had a link on the introduction of what I was doing. So FONA International is we're a flavor supplier for the food and beverage industry. And you can go ahead and hop on our website if you'd like to. It's www.fona.com. There's a link that says learn, and then you can hop on to, there's something called food science. So learn about food science, and it'll take you to a couple different things, and you can ask me questions directly if you'd like to, or learn a little bit more about careers in the flavor industry. So that's it. Thank you so much. Good luck. Happy e-learning, and hope you guys stay healthy and safe. Thanks. Bye-bye.